My name is Pierre. My military experience is predominantly in the Special Forces. I just spent a few months in a conventional unit beforehand. I've been in this unit for 12 years now at this point. I've deployed in several theaters. On deployments, I've acted as a team member, an assistant team leader, a team leader, even had a moment of being a detachment commander. So I've gone through several different experiences, let's say, in the realm of tactical leadership. The three lessons that I will share today, I will start with the one that I think is the most important. It's the idea of disagreeing and committing. So to disagree and then to commit. The reason why I think this is really important is because actually what happens often in a team is there are a lot of perspectives and there's a lot of things that are happening, and everybody sees things from a particular angle, and that should create disagreement, and there should be a conversation that happens due to that very fact. It is then normal to engage in that conversation and to have disagreements and to be able to express that in a space where it is seen as normal and a process in which we go through in order to then finally reach a point of commitment. The idea is that you should be actively engaging in a certain logic to then reach a point where the team or the organization decides on a decision. And then the key part in this process is to then fully be committed, even if it's not your idea, or if it's just elements of your idea, or if you're not completely happy with something that ends up being somewhat of a compromise. What often happens is that commitment is kind of a mitigated commitment, or it's a commitment that's only at 60-70%, because actually you're maybe doing the idea of someone else, and your own, I guess, ego comes in the way of actually trying to accomplish something together as an organization. So I think the most important thing, what the military sometimes fails to understand, is that the disagreement is a very normal process and a necessary process. And maybe what soldiers fail to understand in this case is that the key part then is committing, and committing fully to a decision, whether it's yours or not. So that's my first lesson that I think is important. My second point will probably be the one that I think has the most importance in life, beyond just the military, but definitely within the military. So it is the idea of friction. Of course, it's a Clausewitzian idea, but it is also an idea that we encounter on a daily basis. There are two types of friction, just to be clear. There's interpersonal friction you have between people, and there's circumstantial friction. So friction caused by circumstances that are usually unforeseeable. This is a part of life, a constant part of life, and will always be a constant part of life. The point on emphasizing that is that it's something you have to learn to be able to cope with, something that you have to be able to conceive of as a form of energy that is neutral. Right? So wherever you have friction, you have a form of energy. Right? Friction creates this energy, but you have to understand that energy as neutral. The idea is understanding it as neutral and not as something negative. Most people, when they get into a conflict, it gets seen as something that's negative and then results in further negativity. So if you can conceptually stop seeing friction as something negative and as a neutral form of energy, then what you do is you seize that energy and you transform that energy. Right? I can't overemphasize this point enough. I would even go to the point of saying that the real art of leadership is this ability to transform friction, the energy of friction, into something positive, into something better, into something stronger. If you had to really define, in my experience, what real leadership is about, it's about that ability to do that. So whether it's circumstances, whether it's people, you take that, you turn friction into an asset. Right? That conversion process is that art. however you want to define it, is that real art of leadership. And I also want to say in that the absence of conflict is not harmony, but apathy. If you think about that phrase, it's also important to know that actually the friction you have between people and circumstances is something that's good. It's basically because two energies are coming together that have their ideas and have their will, so to speak, or have their direction that they want to go in. And what you have to do is just take all that collective energy and make it something useful. So I would also try to say that like if you do have friction with someone, try to frame it as something positive. I've had a situation in the past. I had a bit of a confrontation at first with an American colonel in Iraq. It didn't start very well because we had a disagreement. We saw things from a different angle. But actually it generated a certain form of friction between us, which we converted afterwards into something that made our relationship much stronger. Right? So here suddenly you see friction as an opportunity. So the idea is friction becomes an opportunity, but you make it that. Right? So I think maybe this might be the most important lesson in life beyond just the military, but something that you can deal with on a daily basis. My third lesson would be an acronym, and it's more about like leadership, having a simple acronym for leadership. I guess it would be said BEC, so B-E-C-C, so believe, encourage, challenge and correct. So believe, encourage, challenge and correct. I think if you're going to be in a position of leadership and you're not really sure what to do, it's always something you can fall on, like believe in what you're doing, right? The mission essentially. Believe in the people that you're with. You just believe in them. Like that's something that has to be a preset, right? And then of course, when it comes to people, which is predominantly what this acronym is about, encouragement is like sunlight. I think encouragement is something we don't do enough in the military, but encouragement feels like feeds the good in someone. It just feeds it. And in some ways it allows the bad to just atrophy. And the more you feed the good and kind of ignore the bad, it will naturally atrophy. So in some ways I would say, if you can believe in what you're doing, believe in the people you're with, you always rely on encouragement. Never hold encouragement back, right? It really makes a big difference in people's lives to be encouraged at a small level, at a big level. It's something that lacks in our general military organization. It's quite a competitive organization. And then challenging people, setting the bar higher in some ways. Getting someone to feel like you know they can accomplish more. You know, as Goethe would say, treat someone as they could be, not as they are. It's almost like understanding someone to their full potential, even if they're not actually that way now. You treat them in the way that they could be, and in some ways that creates this pull towards becoming that. Right? If someone you want someone to be like trustful, then trust them. You know, if you want someone to love you, then love them. You know, these are very simple ideas, but often it kind of goes, these things go back and forth. You need to give it in some ways to receive it. And I would say always, like when you're challenging someone to be something that is their full potential, it's similar to, I think Michelangelo, he uses an example of a marble rock, and within every marble rock is a beautiful sculpture. And it's just a matter of freeing that sculpture within the rock by chipping away at it. You know, in some ways as a leader, like that chipping away process of marble is what you're about. You're maximizing human potential. You know, always maximizing human potential around you. Of course, that will have the most effect as in trying to accomplish your mission or trying to improve the effectiveness of an organization. So that, of course, goes without saying. And then the last one is correct. So you're challenging, but you're also correcting. Here I think it's normal. When you hear about believing and encouraging, suddenly it shifts to challenging and correcting. There is both. You know, leadership is a lot about, and I would say primarily about, belief and encouragement, because that feeds the good in someone. It really pulls them up. But there is also an element of challenging someone to be more than they are all the time. Of course, this applies to yourself as well. And finally, correcting behavior or improving or going towards improving someone's performance or attitude or whatever it might be. But I don't think those four components together are something that come together. And so the ability to do all of those at the same time is, of course, not necessarily easy, but it is something you can work on your entire life. So I think whatever position you're in, whatever position of leadership you're in, everyone in the military usually comes into a position like this at some point in time. If you're hesitating, like what it means, it's a very simple acronym. So believe, encourage, challenge, and correct.